feel old? Hip-hop as a genre has been around for over 40 years now. That is an actual eternity in popular music terms. By the time rock music had been around for that long, it was pretty much already on life support. Jazz ruled the landscape for about the same amount of time before it began slowly fading into irrelevance. Hip-hop, as far as I can tell, is still going as strong as ever, even if, like those other genres, it barely resembles what it used to anymore. Still, it can be argued that this is actually a good thing for the lifespan of a genre, because it means that the music has been allowed to evolve. The moment the genre gets too rigidly defined is the exact moment that it begins to stagnate. For this reason, the popular music genres that last for a really long time and leave an indelible impact on multiple generations tend to be the ones that are the most malleable. Hip-hop is similar to rock in that it's possible to fuse the style with any number of disparate genres without losing the essence of what the form represents. As long as it retains a certain number of signifiers, hip-hop can sound like just about anything. Over the years, it's been spliced with funk, folk, jazz, metal, reggae, and yes, even country. Increasingly country these days. By the early 90s, hip-hop was definitely no longer in its infancy, but it also hadn't quite moved into its angsty adolescence yet. It was during this time that the manifold artistic possibilities of the style were just starting to really be explored. The future of the music seemed wide open, and into this climate stepped two brothers from Jersey City, New Jersey. Atrell Chords, aka Prince B, and Jarrett Chords, aka DJ Minute Mix, brought hip-hop to a whole new level of sensitivity, spirituality, and commercial prominence with their recordings as a group under the name PM Dawn. The childhoods of the Chords brothers were marked by two important factors: tragedy and musicality. Their father died of pneumonia at an early age, and they also lost their baby brother Duncan to a horrific drowning. However, their stepfather was drummer George Brown, who played for Kool and the Gang, and informed a lot of Prince B's eclectic musical education. Prince B got his start as a DJ and a songwriter when he was still in high school. Then, in 1988, he recruited his younger brother, DJ Minute Mix, to form PM Dawn. The group's first demo cost $600, which Prince B saved up while working as a security guard at a homeless shelter. In 1989, they released their first single, Ode to a Forgetful Mind, on an independent label called Warlock Records.
Let's say it isn't music, I call it the collage that I pasted out of music. It's a shame when the MCs think they know. I grab a pen and let my mind go free.
The United States didn't pay much attention, but the single made them critical darlings in the UK when it was released there by G Street Records. As it turned out, they signed their contract with G Street just in time for the label to get bought out by Island Records, which released their 1991 debut album Of the Heart, of the Soul, and of the Cross, The Utopian Experience. In case that album title didn't tip you off, PM Dawn had a decidedly incongruous aesthetic for a hip-hop act. During this time, there were a few mainstream rappers out there flirting with ultra-fashion styles or psychedelic imagery, and even compared to them, PM Dawn looked like full-on hippies. This approach also extends to their lyrics. Rappers had choices when it came to lyrical subject matter in the 90s. There was the traditional hype up the party stuff, there was the drugs and the gangbanging, there was militant political consciousness, and if you were feeling really ambitious, there was even love songs. PM Dawn sort of bypassed all that. Or did they?
Reality used to be a friend of mine, cause complete control I don't take too kind. Christina Applegate, you gotta put me on. I guess who's a piece of the cake?
It's really hard to tell what Prince B is rambling about, is my point. A lot of his verses read like poetic free association, occasionally touching on concrete topics, but mostly just creating a vague impression of verbally scenic esoterica. What's important is not so much the content of the lyrics as the spiritual, emotional, and psychological effect that they create on the listener. Finally, if you can look past all that, there's the music. Which is, well, listen to this. Yes, the main sample on this song is from Spandau Ballet's True. Their lead singer, Tony Hadley, even shows up in the video. Most of us probably have a fairly stereotypical idea of what 90s rap sounded like, and I'm willing to guess most people's idea isn't early 80s British new wave ballad. But that's what made PM Dawn unique, that they were so willing to expand the possibilities of the musical style that they would make choices that nobody else would. And it paid off in a big way, making this song the first single from a black hip-hop artist that hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Prior to this, the only rap songs that ever got to #1 were by Marky Mark and Vanilla Ice, which means that this is quietly one of the biggest breakthroughs the genre ever made. And it wasn't just audiences that were jumping onto PM Dawn's wavelength. They had critics fawning over the album too. Most frequently, they drew comparisons to the similarly highly regarded De La Soul, but their mixture of ambient soundscapes, smooth melodic vocals, and strange evocative lyrics was recognized as something totally unique, as lush and gorgeous and as abstract as rap music gets.
But for the slightest moment, I watched you think about what it's like as a paper doll.
PM Dawn became bona fide stars, but their success was met with equal amounts of derision from hip-hop purists who considered them soft and more pop than the genre should be. Then, in an interview with Details magazine, Prince B drew the ire of legendary rapper KRS-One with this quote, KRS-One wants to be a teacher, but a teacher of what? Now, in the context of the full interview, the quote honestly doesn't sound that bad, as it comes among a whole assortment of other random thoughts. Prince B's diction was apparently just as hard to follow outside of his music. But still, KRS-One apparently took major issue with that quote, leading to an incident where he rushed the stage during a PM Dawn concert and shoved Prince B off the stage to perform a couple of his songs with Boogie Down Productions. But although they weren't always embraced by the rap community at large, PM Dawn's chart success continued with the song featured on the soundtrack to the 1992 movie Boomerang called I'd Die Without You, which charted at number 3 in the US.
Anything that I would not do since I died without you.
This song establishes firmly, if it wasn't already clear, that PM Dawn were not just a hip-hop collective, but honest-to-God serious musicians. There's not even a hint of rapping to the vocals and no recognizable samples whatsoever. Instead, it's dominated by Prince B's crooning vocals and tinkly, meandering piano work, making it sound almost like some new-age urban soul track.
Is it my turn to totally understand to watch you walk out of
This hit seemed to herald a new direction in their sound, reinforced by its inclusion on their 1993 album The Bliss album?
so take every little piece of my heart.
Full title, The Bliss album. Vibrations of love and anger and the ponderance of life and existence. So yeah, they're still doing their thing here. Among other things, this album includes a Beatles cover, a duet with Boy George, and a song built on a sample of George Michael's father figure. That latter song, Looking Through Patient Eyes, was the biggest of the album's new singles, charting at number 6 in the Hot 100, and personally, it's my favorite PM Dawn song.
Channel, a professional liar. How I learned to contradict those vibes. Johnny, help me. I think I'm falling.
To me, PM Dawn are at their strongest when they're keeping one foot rooted in hip-hop while unabashedly indulging their pop appeal and retaining their distinctly bizarre identity.
And sings to you. Open up your mind and you will see.
Honestly, part of me can see why their shtick didn't last with audiences. There's a real fine line with combining such outrageously counterintuitive approaches, and it could easily tip over into self-parody for some. But for me, PM Dawn had a consistency and musical quality that transcended all novelty value. They were the real deal. Their lyrics were compelling, even if you couldn't understand or make sense of them, and the music was arranged thoughtfully, incorporating all manner of diverse influences. PM Dawn released 2 more albums in the 90s, 1995's Jesus Wept and 1998's Dearest Christian, I'm so very sorry for bringing you here, Love Dad. First of all, yikes on that second album title. Although the 1995 single Downtown Venus, built on a sample from Deep Purple's Hush, crossed over to the modern rock charts, neither of these releases reached anything close to the commercial heights of their first early singles.
And I tried to define myself.
However, based on everything I've heard and read about them, I have a hard time believing they really cared all that much. Prince B in particular strikes me as one of those dudes that just makes art for the pure love of it, as if he was on some higher plane than the rest of us mortals. To their credit, critics never abandoned the group, even after their sales steadily declined. They were not one of these bandwagon groups you see who get all the hype in the world, only to see it disappear once their fame is gone. They continued to receive praise for their adventurous music and emotionally honest lyricism long after they stopped having hits.
I had no right bringing you here, knowing what I know.
Unfortunately, that's about the last positive thing they had going for them at this point in their career, as their story abruptly starts to get depressing as hell from here on out. Around the release of Jesus Wept, DJ Minute was arrested and charged with sexual abuse of an underage family member. Prince B subsequently ousted his brother from the group, although this was not made public until later. After the 90s, Prince B's health issues also started to escalate. He had been diagnosed with diabetes back in 1992 following a 3-day coma, and in 2000, he suffered a stroke that affected his ability to promote their new album. In 2005, PM Dawn competed on a reality show called Hit Me, Baby, One More Time, in which the contestants were all former pop stars performing their biggest hit along with a cover of a newer song. And they won their episode with strong renditions of Set Adrift on Memory Bliss and Blurry by Puddle of Mud of all things. They beat out the likes of Shannon, Juice Newton, and Emotion, and Missing Persons, and got to donate $20,000 to the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. And they somehow pulled this off despite Prince B still recovering from a massive stroke that partially paralyzed the left side of his body. In later years, the Chords brothers' cousin, Doc G, who had joined the group in the 90s, became the de facto leader of them as Prince B's health continued to deteriorate. As his diabetes symptoms worsened, he would eventually lose part of his leg and end up being confined in nursing homes where he could receive more intensive medical care. On June 17, 2016, Latrell Chords, aka Prince B, died of renal failure related to diabetes complications at Jersey Shore University Medical Center at the age of 46, 3 years ago this day. If PM Dawn's approach to rap music seemed unusual at the time, their legacy today distinguishes them as perhaps one of the most crucial steps toward establishing rap as what it is today, which is basically just mainstream pop. Before them, rappers didn't talk about their emotions all that much, and they certainly didn't try to sing all the time. Now that's all anybody does. It's a cliche among old men yelling at clouds to state that rappers don't even rap anymore, they just make normal R&B songs. And that everybody's all touchy-feely now instead of trying to sound all hardcore. Even the rappers who are genuinely violent and dangerous criminals generally fit this description. And if you want somebody to blame for that, go ahead and blame PM Dawn. But keep in mind, their innovations went a lot further than that, creating an environment where obscure and unexpected musical choices could share space with borderline incomprehensible lyrical stylings. PM Dawn deserve credit for being one of the many 90s artists that made it just a little more safe to be yourself. I'm Jacob, and this was Rad 90s Music. Rest in peace, Prince B.